So thanks very much for joining in. Thanks for being available with us this afternoon. Thanks especially to Jean-François and David who agreed to connect this afternoon with us. The idea of this webinar is to share some experiences regarding how to put boots on the ground when it comes to decarbonization and launch programs to support industrial companies towards industrial decarbonization. Before jumping into the webinar itself, a few words about who's ACE Énergie. ACE Énergie is an energy service company with two business lines. One business line regarding consulting services, and which I represent, and one business line regarding financial services to help support the finance of projects of decarbonization. And in the consulting service, we operate especially towards high energy consumers, mostly industrial companies, around three topics. One topic of energy sourcing, which is that goes from purely negotiating contracts to revamping a hedging strategy or signing more exotic contracts, especially PPAs. Implementing what I call energetical excellence, which is basically applying the principles of operational excellence to specifically energy topics. And the last item is sustainability strategy and sustainable investments, which is how to define a roadmap towards decarbonization, or how to make sure your diligence and you do your due diligence before investing in a major energy decarbonization investment. And so those are typically the areas of work where we operate within our clients. So the idea of this webinar this afternoon is to walk a few analysis regarding energy excellence programs. And so to recap on the context in which those programs are launched, the proposed methodology that we found after discussing with several different industrial consumers, how to roll out those kinds of programs, and what questions to have on the back of your mind before launching a similar program, and sharing some feedback from Jean-François Claver, who was Chief Industrial Officer at Imerys, and David Delalande, who was Chief Energy Officer at a agri-food business, and both launched similar programs. Regarding the context of energy, I'm dealing with something that has already on their mind, which is one, the fact that energy can be expensive, and the energy crisis a few years ago has shown that we can have spikes that go all the way to €1,000 per megawatt hour on electricity, specifically in Europe, but that's also true elsewhere. I have in mind the Texan grid of electricity, where they had bad surprises regarding electricity as well in Texas. So that aspect of volatility in energy prices is something that all the industrial consumers have to deal with. So that's one part of the equation, is to find savings, because energy is becoming a bigger and bigger deal, and especially it can be a bad surprise every now and then. The second aspect is the fact that everyone is getting organized towards sustainability and towards, for example, SBTI, Science-Based Target Initiative commitments. So you have a graph at the bottom of the slide to show how many companies are committing to SBTI targets. The commitment is one thing, but making sure you're able to walk the talk and achieve the savings that you're committing yourselves to is also an important aspect as well. So what we've been doing is to try to conduct some market research, some interviews regarding companies that rolled out energetical excellence programs. And so we interviewed companies from 4 different fields and different sizes. One is a specialty mineral company. Knowing who's around the table today, I'll let you guess who that is. A specialty minerals company that conducted a program on more than 50 sites worldwide, and the size of the energy spent of each size was in between 1 to 15 million euros per year of spent. A very smaller group of industrial bakeries with less sites and a smaller site. An upstream agri-food cooperative with above 20 sites with a spend between 0.5 and 5 millions. and a chemistry specialty worldwide group with more than 70 sites and big sites with spends growing from 3 to 25 million euros per year. So even though the size of the companies that we interviewed were very variable, from rather small to very big, they all rolled out a program that had 4 common guiding principles. The first guiding principle is to take some time to be on site. Again, putting boots on the ground, making sure that people are traveling to the local reality and to the local sites to dedicate time with the local sites on generating ideas for energy efficiency. The second aspect is that all of those 4 groups were conducting that program with a standard toolbox. They were doing so by thinking in advance of what they were going to do once they arrive on site. So making sure they had a common method, a common approach, a common toolbox to come up with ideas once they're on site. The third founding principle is to anticipate a dedicated governance. Coming up with ideas is one thing, but you need to make sure that there are governance rituals and committees and process of investment tracking, etc., to make sure that once you came up with an idea, everyone aligns on that idea, you get the capex you request, and you have the rituals to alert your management if you don't have the resources, if something changed, if projects are late, etc., etc. And the last aspect is investment in skills. When you roll out a program that goes from site to site to generate energy performance plans, it would be a waste not to make sure that the people going on site are as knowledgeable as possible. That program obviously becomes a laboratory for talent, and you need to invest on those people to make sure they have the right skills and capitalize on those. One of the common aspects that we found when discussing about those four programs is a vision of projects segregated between 3 families. A family of quick win, where you don't need capex or little capex, a family of mid-term industrial projects, and a family of process breakthrough. And so what we've seen is that kind of program, making sure you go from plant to plant to come up with ideas, is a good way to identify potential for the first 2 categories. And it's also a way to make sure you capitalize on information so that tomorrow you're able to trigger breakthrough technology as well. So once you're there, you can propose normal stuff, something with low technological risk, midterm and quick win. But you can also collect information that are key to assess the relevance of more innovative technology, such as hydrogen, heat pumps, thermal solar, etc., etc. So you focus on the first 2 categories, but it's also a way to anticipate the rollout of category number 3. And one of the things that we collected from that exercise was a few metrics. The metrics that we collected is that the gains that the people we spoke with were expecting was between 7 and 20% of the energy bill. So once you roll out that program, on average, you're going to have some sites where you're able to come up with ideas where you're going to save 7% energy, and some sites where you're going to go as high as 20%. And once those are just ideas, then you need to implement those ideas. And the implementation rate, the completion rate of the ideas was in the range of 60 to 120%. 60 because some projects were either disappointing or the capex was higher than expected, or the technological feasibility was not demonstrated, etc. So you have attrition to go to 60%, but you also have cases in which the project that you identified are actually more interesting than you thought initially, and so you get more savings than you anticipated at first. So that's why in some cases, the implementation rate is sometimes higher than the identified savings. On that 7 to 20%, typically you're going to have between a fourth and slightly below half that are going to be free savings, meaning savings without capex. Savings where you can implement that just with people mindset and maintenance operating procedures, etc. Last metric to have in mind is a payback between 1 and 2.5 years. Consistently, when we spoke with the 4 clients that we disclosed earlier, what they were mentioning is that the typical projects that they had was project between 1 and 2.5 years of payback. Why is this interesting? Because it's also a way to, as I said, have a lab of talent. If you have an opportunity to go from plant to plant, it's also a way to invest on specific people. If you have young engineers that spend their time discovering new industrial realities here and there, they're going to get knowledgeable. So it's a way to use those talents later on. It's also a way to spread climate awareness. Not all the sites know the difference between scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Not all the sites know the difference between CO2 and other kind of greenhouse gases. Not all plants know about subsidies that you can get for energy efficiency projects, etc., etc. And by putting boots on the ground, by going on the field and conducting such programs, it's a way to make sure you spread that awareness about energy. Last aspect, it's also a way to make sure you create unity within your group, because you're going to get consensual savings. It's always more appealing outside to promise savings if you promise of getting rid of CO2 rather than getting rid of people. And so proposing a program where you're going to focus on megawatt hour is a program where you typically are going to have more buy-in because people are happy to try to go and collect those savings. So that's for the main context, the main elements that we've seen, the common denominator between the clients that we interviewed regarding energy efficiency programs.
Okay, sorry. So one of the ways to implement energy excellence program is to spend time on site. So it will the duration we spend on site will clearly depend on the size of the site. It could be 3 days, but it also could be 4 weeks if the site is a bigger one. The methodology we usually see is a methodology split in 4 phases. The first one is the preparation phases, where the energy team is collecting data. It's also the time where we define the project team on site, so the plant team, and also a good way to do some analysis before we go on site. The second phase is an energy diagnostic phase. The idea here is to analyze the energy consumption of the different equipments, to identify and quantify the energy waste, and finally to generate ideas side by side with the plant team. The third phase is a roadmap design phase. Here the idea is to quantify the savings and the capex of the idea generated in the second phase. It's also the phase where we are going to prioritize the action regarding the payback and plan it in a 3 to 5 years roadmap. Finally, the last phase is the implementation phase. So varying the implication of the energy team in this phase could depend on the kind of program we have seen, but usually it's the plant team which is dealing with implementing the roadmap. What's important here is to see that the commitment of the energy team has to be really high on this methodology. It's a key success factor to transmit the information from the energy team to the local team. So if we take a step backward, we can take a look at where the energy team on the 4 different programs we studied. What you can see here is that in the 4 programs, we have corporate resources and business uses resources that are working together to implement the program. Sometimes you can also find external resources as consultant, expert, or solution provider. The resources can be fixed or it can be interchangeable. That's depending on the program. But we have identified two key success factors. The first one is that the energy team should be a dedicated team, and it should be trained, efficient, and well equipped with tools to do the analysis. The second key success factor is that the energy team should be on site, on the field with the local team to ensure that the local team is on board and that the information is transmitted from energy team to the local team. So if you can take a look at the diagnostic phase, there is three main steps during this phase to understand how the energy is consumed, to estimate or quantify the energy wastes, and to generate ideas to make energy saving. So the first one is necessary to analyze and understand how the site is consuming its energy. We can use different tools like load curve, loss bridge, or cost curve. The second step is important to get. So we are calculating energy waste, and we also are sharing this calculation with the local team for them to agree with the energy team. This is a very good way to onboard the team, so showing and sharing the analysis. And another really important step is to generate ideas during workshop, side by side with the local team. Once again, it's very important for the local team to be on board. So if we take a look at the three levers we have identified to generate savings during this phase, this diagnostic phase. The first one we have identified is asset inter-optimization. So the idea is here to ensure that the most efficient equipment is prioritized to produce when we have two different equipment or more that are doing the same job. To do so, we have two different tools, so the cost curve and the energy steps analysis. Then we are going to assess on site the operational and load losses. Usually we use a load curve. That's a tool that's going to help us to understand how the equipment is operated and where the wastes are. And finally, we also check at asset upgrades to go further just energy efficiency. To do so, we use two different tools usually. So the first one is a load bridge, which is basically a thermal balance. And also we can use a heat map to identify the best candidates for heat recycling. So now, if we take a look at the design phase, it's a really important phase to ensure that the project is well understood by the plant team and that there is a chance that this team will implement the idea generated and the action selected. So once again, three main steps. So the first one is the idea prioritization. It has to be done with the sites. And it's a good way to restrict the perimeter of the analysis, so selecting 10 to 20 opportunities that are going to be quantified in the second step. Of course, it depends on the time you spend on site. If you spend 3 days or 4 months or 4 weeks, you will have the opportunity to check at more or less business cases. So the second step is to quantify these business cases, calculating savings and capex to identify the best one, the best opportunity to plan in a roadmap for the site. And usually this is also a good moment to try and implement distance to excellence, which is a methodology to make energy saving on the long term. Once again, if we look at the key success factor of this phase, there is 3 things that we identified. The first one is to onboard the local team. That's really important for them, and that's really important to share information with them. They need to believe in the roadmap that we are designing. Then it's also important to prioritize the project because we have limited resources. The best paybacks project should be coming first. And finally, it's also key to plan the project selected through time, so 3 to 5 years. The idea here that to be realistic, this roadmap should be limited to 1 project at a time for 1 person. So that's a way to capture savings step by step, little by little, but it's consistent.
Before jumping to, I think we have a problem about timing. I'd like to get the feedback from both Jean-François and David, because I know one of them, and especially David, has a hard stop at 2:30. David, what would you take away from your experience in launching that kind of program? And I think you can step on stage. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Augustin. Like all the project and decarbonization project may have payback issue, are facing to payback issue, and as a result, the search for the subsidy to finance them is crucial. We know that in Europe, the situation is heterogeneous, and countries have different policy. If you are in Belgium, we know that almost nothing. Spain depends of it varies by province and federal government. In Italy, we know that there is a system quite similar to CEE mechanism that we have in France. That in France, we have solutions that enable us to secure this funding and to valorize and to really succeed in the deployment of this such of program. This allocation rules are known and clear and simplify clearly the management of this such of program. CEE, just as a reminder, it's like a sheet showing calculation on theoretical gains determined by kilowatt-hour CUMAC. And then it's just an agreement that we can have with operators. But we have also other type of program to finance and to support, in fact, this such of project. We have l'ADEME propose a decarb and program, but it's for large scale, large project, because the importance of the project must to be substantial. It's up to 3 million euros of investment and global financing below 30 million euros. What is important here is really to anticipate this such of action for the project for several reasons. First, it's just I would say an administrative one. If you can benefit the funding after you launch the order. So you must have to negotiate and validate the funding before. And moreover, it takes time. It takes time to produce this kind of agreement for CEE or also for decarb indus, because to produce the files to present the projects. Consider, for example, for decarb, and it's 1 month on average. It may be a good idea to get help in finding this kind of funding, of subsidies. Project may meet several criteria, so for call for project, and therefore several funding programs, so determine also which is the most interesting for the program. And there are always strategy to be defined when you submitted the files. The amount is one. You need to have in mind that we are in competition with several projects, so we have to defend and present a good quality in the file that you may submit it. Of course, there are also at European level some additional subsidies, but be aware that the competition can be very tough. For example, we know that last year Hydrogen Bank launched a call for project for the production on green hydrogen, and we know that the winning bids were awarded at 0.5 euro per kilo of H2. Compared with requirement for project in France that were probably well below 2 or 3 euro per kilo. So it means that here the competition can be very tough. Finally, if you want, you can seek financing with green bonds. Here we are no longer talking about subsidies, but financing, because we are not looking to improve payback, but really to carry out a project. This is a financing aspect of the program management, and you need to keep in mind that if you want to go directly on this market, the ticket is substantial, around 700 million euros probably. You can, of course, go through finances organization that will raise this funding for a pool, I would say, of company, and then finance similar project. But beyond the financial aspect, communication around this type of approach can bring recognition to the manufacturer.
Okay. So what you're saying is basically when you launch that kind of program, one, be very clear that you collect all the subsidies that you can collect. Two, look for financial engineering beyond just subsidies. Look if you can reduce the WACC, your cost of capital, I guess, with green bonds. And because maybe you won't be able to reduce your cost of capital, but at least it's going to have a high communication impact if you want to activate this kind of lever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So not only technical engineering, but also financial engineering to make sure that you allocate the right capex to the minimum possible amount. Okay.
Exactly. And it's a key one element of the success of your project.
Okay. Thanks very much, David. Jean-François, any thoughts regarding your own experience on launching a group-wide program?
Yes. So, let me talk about the how to convince ExCom. So in my case, it was to convince my colleagues at the ExCom or the business unit presidents to get into such a program and why. So I see 3 steps for the convincing. So the first one is normally easy. You have to answer questions like, is energy cost key or not for your variable cost? In emissions used to be the second category of variable cost, so it was significant. And is CO2 emissions related to energy usage or efficiency significant or not? So normally this is easy because at ExCom level, they know how to look at numbers. So it's either yes or no, depending on the company. But obviously, I suppose people listening to this have some energy consumption and cost. So it's probably yes for them. Then comes the second step is how do we do it? And the first step of the second step is a difficult one. Because of course the general idea will be, okay, we'll ask our plant managers to do an action plan, or we are currently doing certification ISO 50001 and we'll take care of it, or some other statements like this. Okay, so that is nice, and this is the first reflex and what needs to be thought. So why? Because it will never be enough to achieve improvement in efficiency and the gains either in cost or in CO2 or in both. So why isn't it sufficient? It was largely explained by Augustin and Louis Arnaud before. It's because it's complex. You have a lot of levers, topics. You need really a holistic view. You need to look at everything. You need to have methodology to rank the impact of all the levers, set priorities. You need a lot of technical knowledge, which comes from the plants, but also come from the people conducting this diagnosis. You saw load curve and you saw different terms. Okay, this looks nice and easy, but it takes a bit of knowledge. And you also need to have a mechanism to share ideas of good practices, especially if you are multi-site and especially if you have comparable sites. So you encounter the same situation several times. So it's also very important to have a mechanism to be able to do that. Of course, this is a difficult step for convincing. The people saying, no, we'll do it. The beauty of the climate problem is that procrastination has become more difficult now in most companies. So you cannot wait forever and say, don't worry, we'll do it with ISO 50001. Because if you don't, the time has gone and the deadline has not moved. So if you have an SBTi commitment, I don't know, Imerys has one in 2030, it cannot go around the bushes forever seeing how to achieve it because we're already at the end of 2024. So, and of course, so then if you pass this step to convince, then it was explained, you need to develop, copy, whatever you want, methodologies, you need to get resources. And here it all depends who you are. If you have few sites, it's probably better to externalize it to people like ACE Énergie or others. But here it's an advertisement for ACE Énergie, so we'll say ACE Énergie. If you have many sites, you can do what Imerys did, either something hybrid. You start external, and ACE Énergie propose also to help you to build up an internal team and get it ramped up, and then you internalize after some learning with ACE Énergie. Or you can go directly internal. That's what I did in Imerys. But I went out to hire people from consulting firms, from companies that had good methodology. And so I imported, if you want, both the methodology and the skills by hiring them outside. So this is the third method. We had 60, 70 relevant sites with energy consumption we wanted to attack, and we have diagnosed most of them now. So it was worth internalizing and developing a team directly, but you might be in more intermediate cases, and 3 formulas can exist. But again, I mean, this is, if you want to do this seriously, and I'm sure you want, because now it's a matter of money and survival, you need to use strong methodologies and resources. It's beyond what normal plant people or plant teams can do, even in big plants. It takes too much skills you need to put together.
So what I take away from you for your intervention, thanks very much for that feedback, is to convince you need numbers, because that's how you get an ExCom commit, to provide numbers both in terms of savings and in terms of CO2. You need to make sure you have a clear rollout strategy and not wait for plants to do it on their own, but advertise on the fact that you're going to bring local expertise and resources to support the plants, because if you leave plants on their own, they're never going to make it happen. And to anticipate the sharing of resources and the sharing of good ideas, because that's what's going to work to replicate the good ideas. And it's interesting, to see how we align on the need to staff either internally or externally or hybrid, as you said, to staff that kind of program because you lack time. And I agree with you, not doing it right the first time means you won't have time to do it at all, because it's a time constraint exercise, and we need to push fast on the decarbonization idea.
Yes. For money, for the cost savings, it was not time constraint. It's a problem to decide how fast you want to do cost savings. Of course, 2022 rang a bell for everybody regarding energy costs. So, but for decarbonization, we need to go with the proper speed.
Sure. Regarding getting sure that you roll out this kind of program, we had a few elements to discuss exactly that kind of question. How do you get yourself a framework to make sure you're able to roll out such a program? And what we discussed after interviewing different clients with different programs is the first step is to design your own framework. Louis Arnaud has shown that some plants do it with hybrid external and internal. Some plants had a dedicated team. Some plants had hybrid between corporate and BUs, etc. It's who are you going to staff? How do you see things in terms of who is going to roll it out? And what's the method? What's the tools that they're going to use on site? And we've seen that some were counting on suppliers to come. Some were counting on experts. Some were counting on a toolbox of analysis. But whatever you do, you need to be clear on what's exactly the framework that you're going to roll out on all your plants. Once you've made sure that this framework is attractive, is interesting, is promising, exactly like Jean-François said, selling it to ExCom, making sure you get resources and a formal green light, because in the end, you're going to need people on site, and you're going to need time of people on site to welcome you. So you're going to need resources to go there and resources to welcome you once you're there. So clearly, there's a topic about making sure you get a clear green light of management, a clear buy-in of management, and convincing them in that approach. Number 3 is to roll it out, of course, making sure and improving your methods and your tools as you go further. To track this rolling out, if you have a target of rolling it out on 20 plants, making sure you keep momentum in your calendar and you avoid a situation where you do a pilot, wait for everyone to agree, wait 6 months and do another pilot and wait 6 months, etc. Making sure you have a calendar to walk the talk and go from plant to plant in a row and to do them back to back. Make sure you have something to monitor project implementation. That's something that's often forgotten, thinking I have a clear roadmap defined by sites. Yeah, but how do I make sure the site is able to deliver, that they don't lose track of the projects that have been identified, that they have the right resources, they have the right people to achieve that? You need to be able to monitor project implementation. And as Jean-François said, build a culture of sharing good practices and sharing knowledge by implementing communities and a platform to share what works well and what is not necessarily as relevant. So that's what we wanted to share with you. Main takeaways was really the things to have in mind is by doing that, you can try to target 7 to 20% identify savings with 60 to more than 100% implementation, with sometimes free capex up to a certain amount, but sometimes free capex, a realistic payback. And if you want to roll it out, You need to design a framework, send it to management, deploy the tools, track rollouts, monitor projects, and deploy sharing good practices. Thanks very much for your availability. Is there any questions or comments? You can put comments, questions in the question box.